Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bedtime Stories, the Mind at Midnight podcast. I'm Jaylim, and today's topic is sleep, mental health, and the pressure to do it all in academics, extracurriculars, jobs, responsibilities, and the feeling that sleep is the one thing you have to sacrifice if you want to succeed. So, for a lot of students, sleep is the first thing to go, not because we don't want it, but because it feels like optional compared to everything else. School sends the message that productivity equals worth, more homework, harder classes, higher expectations. There's always another assignment, another test, and another deadline. And then there's the pressure we put on ourselves. We don't want to disappoint teachers, parents, or even ourselves. We compare our workload to other people and think, if they can handle this, I should be able to as well. So we stay up later. We push through the exhaustion, and we tell ourselves we'll catch up on sleep later, even though later never really comes. What we don't always talk about is how closely sleep and mental health are connected. Because when you don't get enough sleep, everything feels heavier and stress feels louder. It's harder to focus, it's harder to regulate emotions, and it's way harder to feel motivated. And then the cycle starts. You're tired, so it takes you longer to do your work. And because it takes longer, you stay up later. Because you stay up later, you're even more tired the next day. Feeling overwhelmed doesn't mean you're weak. It just probably means that you're exhausted. Because rest isn't laziness. It's something your brain truly needs to function. And there's this idea that staying up late means you're working harder and therefore doing better. But in reality, exhaustion often hurts academic performance more than it helps it. When you're tired, you're more likely to make mistakes, forget information, and struggle to focus during class or tests. Cramming all night might feel productive, but learning actually sticks better when your brain is rested. Sleep isn't the opposite of studying, it's actually part of it, and success doesn't have to come from running yourself into the ground. So, talking about that, moving into extracurriculars, jobs, and overpacked schedules. On top of academics, many students are juggling so many extracurriculars, sports, clubs, leadership roles, plus maybe even part-time jobs or family responsibilities. And some of these things we love, but others feel necessary, and some feel like they're required just to keep up with everyone else. There's pressure to be impressive, and this is especially true in high school. There's pressure to be involved and to be busy. But being busy doesn't automatically mean you're doing well. It's okay to admit that your schedule feels overwhelming and to feel stretched thin. And it's okay to also recognize that you can't do everything perfectly all at once. And that's something I've definitely struggled with for myself, because when you have such high standards for yourself and then you sacrifice that time that you which should be resting, the pressure is even more amped up to perform well, and it can trap you in a cycle of staying up late and then waking up early, or some students will even be like, I'll wake up early to work on this assignment. And in my case, it's never really happened that way, but it is really something common for students to feel like they have to sacrifice their rest time in order to just be successful. And then there's also ways that we can mitigate this. I mean, stress and work is always going to be a thing, especially as we grow older, we move into college and eventually into the professional workplace. But finding balance is one of the most important things. It doesn't mean you have to have a perfect routine or suddenly get 8 hours of sleep every night, but it can start small. Maybe it's prioritizing what truly needs to be done tonight and what can wait. Or maybe it's letting good enough be good enough sometimes. And that's not necessarily degrading your standards or kind of halfway doing something. At some point, we have to realize that not everything is going to be perfect, and it's okay to accept that you tried your best and maybe it didn't turn out the way you wanted to, but it is that effort that matters, and you shouldn't punish yourself by then taking away time that you need to recharge. And maybe it's even recognizing that this rest helps you show up better tomorrow. It's okay to check in with yourself and ask, is this schedule helping me or is it hurting me? Because you can have straight A's, you can be the most successful person, but you can be miserable because you're not resting and you're not feeling your best. And rest isn't something that necessarily has to be earned. It's something you need. So that mindset of, okay, I'll do this assignment, I'll do this homework, and then I will go to sleep. But sleep isn't necessarily a reward. It's something that you should prioritize and that you need no matter what. So, before I wrap up and give some reflections and takeaways, there's a few questions that we should think about. What usually keeps you up at night? What would change if sleep mattered just as much as grades? And what would it look like to be a little kinder to yourself? So, to kind of answer these, what usually keeps you up at night? Aside from like academic pressures, there's pressures like in all aspects of life. It could be work, it could be family, or it could be personal struggles, mental health that you're dealing with. And that's something that is truly very tied to sleep. Here at Mind at Midnight, our mission is centered around making sure people rest enough for the betterment of their mental health. And I've noticed that if I don't get enough rest, I can go to school the next day feeling overwhelmed, and maybe I'll come home and I just have no energy and I don't feel like talking to anyone. And this is a really dangerous pattern because the longer that you stay in this specific pattern, it can actually harm your mental health because you're not interacting with people the way you should be. You're not even interacting with yourself because you're basically kind of stuck in this autoplay mode. And then for the next question, what would change if sleep mattered just as much as grades? I feel like this is dependent on the person, but I've grown up in an environment where everyone at school has always cared about grades. My friends have cared about grades because it's a way to show that we are hardworking and we deserve the achievements that we have. But also, if we put getting hours of sleep on a pedestal like we did for grades, I think that would be a lot healthier for students because sometimes when people come to school, they're like, oh, I only slept an hour last night. Oh, I only slept 4 hours last night. Oh, I pulled an all-nighter. And kind of measuring how hard we worked based on how little we slept is such an unhealthy pattern. It's more effective to prioritize your own rest and say, I did my best, and be able to put in that 100% effort every day, no matter the outcome, than to hyper focus on something and spend 6 hours doing it and not going to sleep that night, and then waking up and not being able to perform at your best. And then the final question, what would it look like if you could be a little kinder to yourself? So I feel like alongside this pressure, it's really easy for people to be mean to themselves. So if I were to do bad on something in school, I would look at it as I didn't try hard enough or I wasn't smart enough. But at the end of the day, we're all still learning and growing, and it's okay to have off days. And it's okay to have days where this assignment, this schoolwork is too overwhelming. I need to prioritize myself. Because when you stop prioritizing yourself, all aspects of your life are put on strain. So, what can we take away from this episode and what we've reflected on? You are allowed to want success, but at the same time, you are allowed to rest. There's a big culture about being overworked, especially I feel like in corporate kind of workspaces, that a lot of them are overworked, or there's so many students that now energy drinks and caffeine has become such a big thing that everyone is consuming because we need it to keep going. And it's okay to want to be successful. It's okay to want to have good grades. But what it's not okay to do is take away from something that we really need, like sleep. You're allowed to also want to rest. On the weekend, instead of cramming for that test on Monday, it's okay if you decide that you want to sleep a couple hours extra. There shouldn't be this pressure that you're not trying hard enough if you're already being pushed to your limits. So I just want to say that make sure you're taking care of yourself and you're prioritizing your own rest, because the only person that can 100% control how they take care of you is you. So thank you so much for listening. And if this episode resonated with you, you're definitely not alone. You're not the only one feeling this pressure. It's really common among students and even adults as we get older. So make sure you're taking care of yourself. And remember, you don't have to do it all at the cost of your well-being. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Bedtime Stories, the Mind at Midnight podcast. This is Jaylim, and I'm wishing you a happy day.